So we're at the 25th anniversary of
Road and Track.
Road and
magazine.
Track, and Shirley had been the advertising manager,
Shirley ran the advertising desk,
right?
and she was a real pet of Elaine Bond's. Elaine was the real power of the place.
Yeah.
Kind of like Winnie. You know, so there's something strong. And John, he was kind of in the shadows, but he loved to write historic stuff about car productions and where they had come from.
Yeah.
He was always talking about the Terraplane tooling being bought up by Essex or some damn old thing, which was ancient history. And John was all hung up in that stuff. But Elaine walked through the offices in a kind of an imperious, she was a big woman, smoking, and looking down at, no, Bruce, you know, and she'd dictate something and everybody had to run and go do it. She was very strong. Dan was at the party of their 25th anniversary, I believe. And I sat with him for the longest time and chatted. Nice man. Later, I never saw him again. And I heard by people that worked at his shop that he would like to have seen me come by and say hello, and I never did. I was told that by others that are right here, my friends, that Jim Chamberlain's son worked there for many years. And said, Dan would like to talk to you, but I never did for some reason. At any rate, it was a passing, kind of a nice.
It was a moment, yeah.
I watched him race at Riverside.
Oh, that's a great.
Because Meyers Manx was the flagman.
No kidding.
They parked us at all the corners, horribly on the outside of the corners. Sometimes it was kind of scary because you don't want to be on the outside of the corner. Going on the inside of the corner, they knew exactly where they were going, but somehow to be on the other side is not a good place to be. But nobody got killed, and I'm so old I can tell old stories, huh?
Well, I since you just saw the movie, I thought I would tell you that what happened after Alex's 62 days on the set was that most of his presence in the movie wound up on the cutting room floor. And
Yes.
so Evie, Mom,
What was her name?
Evie.
Evie, that's a nickname.
Eveline from Germany.
Okay.
They rented the theater in Corona del Mar, which was an old-fashioned theater with a marquee out front.
Yeah.
And they put up their own marquee for the one night where all of Friends of the Gurneys boys were going to come to see Alex in the movie. So the marquee said Ford versus Ferrari, starring Alex Gurney for 10 seconds.
If you're lucky.
Isn't that good?
Yes.
Oh, that's
Typical,
funny.
isn't it?
Yeah, typical.
I've been working on that car, and it's very complex. And I wonder sometimes why I am, but I guess I can't help it. It consumes me. My mom's always said, "Oh, you're such a dreamer," since I was far back as I remember. I remember before I was ever in kindergarten, going out in the back and finding all these little tiny yellow flowers, and I bunched them up on my hand, and they made a perfectly round pattern of yellow. And I remember looking up at her, and she's looking, "Oh, Bruce, you're so sweet, and you're such a dreamer." It's never stopped.
Where was that? Where was growing up?
That was at Palos Verdes.
Oh,
That was when we were rich. Wow.
Oops, careful.
I dropped my flashlight. I can't see it, but it's there.
you're right on it. You're right on it. There you go.
I'm right out the door.
Well, you know, that's good that you brought that up, because that's what I really wanted to ask was, as all men who are builders go. Something gets us up in the morning. And it's usually the idea of the project that we're working on at the moment.
Isn't that true?
It's a source of tireless energy.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So, how does that happen? I'm interested to. I mean, you've done that all your life. So, you have any thoughts about that?
We just went to a great big musical yesterday in a church, a huge church. But you know what I was looking at the whole time we're getting ready to listen to this stuff? Great big 50-piece, or is it 50 piece?
85 pieces.
How many?
85
Oh my
piece
God.
band.
It's gorgeous too. I have a lot of music in me. My mom gave me that too. But I was taking huge interest in these glue beams. The biggest I've ever seen.
The laminated glue beams. Yeah,
The church is
Ceiling, yeah.
about 100 feet across and 100 feet deep
yeah.
with a huge stage. And right down the middle of it is these glue beams like those lights down the length of this building.
Yeah.
And they were,
Were they curved?
no,
No,
were
they're straight. Okay.
And the engineering marvel that they were is what I was all hung up with.
Yeah.
I have that sense of engineering, I suppose, not being one, but tirelessly I am thinking of such things. As much as I love the music and I was waiting for that, I was just fascinated. There was 5 of them. They were probably 5 feet tall, thick.
Wow.
They were probably 10, 12 inches thick,
Yeah.
5 feet high,
Right.
about 85 to 100 feet long. There was big windows on either side, and I thought the windows are probably somewhere 8 to 10 feet from one to one. And I sat there and stared at those things and thought, now wait a minute, those things were built up in the Pacific Northwest. They'd come down on a train or a truck. But these were 80, 90 feet, maybe 100 feet long. I said, how is that possible? Well, they probably were taken apart. While you stack up lumber and glue it together, you can, every 30 or 40 feet, you could stop gluing and put them all together, and then when they're all done, they pull them all apart, I suppose, and put them back together again. How can you get 100-foot long something or other around a corner? See, I was taken up with all that mechanical stuff.
Well, that's better than listening to a sermon.
No, there was no sermon. We were invited by the, what is she, Winnie?
It was a concert band from this
Timpani.
area
Ah.
by the timpani player.
She's a crazy lady that plays all those instruments that you bonk with the hammers and stuff. And
You know, the same problem exists for the blades to the windmills. Lengthwise, they're almost impossible to transport,
Right.
right?
I've seen
yes,
them.
yeah.
And I saw the ones being moved around Germany, and it was only the cab of a truck and a fifth wheel and no platform. They attached the rear wheel carriers to the end of the blade, 100 feet out, so that the blade was
What did you call that again?
the windmill blade.
A window pane?
No, the windmill blade. For these wind farms,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
Oh, okay.
the blades are massive.
I
in
see
those
what you're
things.
saying. You're talking about the blade
The blade itself
of a
of a windmill.
windmill.
Yeah.
See, that's where my problem. My
Oh, I'm
hearing.
sorry.
No, it's not. I can't hear. What is it? The TPCB.
Peas.
Aha.
Anyway, yeah, that's. I saw a picture of one of those being towed by a truck, and I guess that's a basic problem.
Yep. Transport.
This church is down in Carlsbad, and I can't imagine how those things got there, but I'm only fascinated with that engineering stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not supposed
Try clearing your throat.
to.
Well, I'm with you on that one. I am with you on that one. Okay.
What did you just say?
It's a band because it doesn't have strings. They're horns, but no strings.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
See how much I missed by getting old and not hearing?
So, Bruce, do you have any explanation about how that whole thing works? About being involved in a project and it gives you sort of infinite energy?
That's a great word because I don't have any energy, but I seem to not be slowed down by the thought. Well, I just wrote something. I woke up this morning knowing that you were coming today. And I wrote it not really thinking about you reading it, but maybe you will. I don't know. I get up earlier than Winnie at times when I'm driven, and I showered and put on a bathrobe and put on slippers and went to my little corner in the garage where I call it my office. It's really a mess, and it's not an office. And I wrote this little piece that is, well, it only wrestles with the problem of your dreams, but that you can't get away from them. And you come back to it over and over in the morning while you lay there sleeping, and as you wake up, you're full of thought. Isn't that interesting? There's so much creativity in the earliest hours.
You're right.
And having read about so many artists as an art student, I read about all of the great guys, and but there was so much that goes on in your head when you wake up after a sleep. So I got up and wrote about it, and I talked about a young man that came in the door here.
I have it right here, but he says he can't read it because he can't.
I have to go to
special.
my gizmo, plug it in, and I read it off of a screen because
But
I
I can
can't
read it to
see.
you,
Right.
if you like.
Sure, please.
The other day, now my voice is going away.
Are you going to read
You
it?
might have to read it. The other day, a guy named Pedro Meyer sat in our office telling Winnie and me that we should be making Meyers Manxes in Mexico. He seemed to be a real car guy, with his background having had a connection to the usual street rods, cobras, and the like. He said the name Manx was everywhere. Manx is here, Manx is there, Manx is everywhere. What really tickled me was his warning that at 93, nobody was going to finance me, and please don't get mad at him for telling me this. Of course, he was right, but I didn't tell him that at this age we lose our teeth, our eyesight, our hearing, but most of all our memory. And I didn't tell him that creativity stays with us until the end. My 99-year-old brother still builds model cars and airplanes to give to the homeless children. My grandpa O'Neill built beautiful shadow boxes of log cabin interiors to hang on the wall, and my mother painted watercolors until her last breath. So I didn't tell this nice young man that I am presently building a new kind of Manx. I'm totally smitten. Every waking moment is filled with the design, the mechanics of how to hook it all together. It's very complex, for I believe it is so in vogue with today's cars. It is hard to keep it looking like the classic Manx dune buggy that crossed oceans, causing a love affair that touched the hearts of children and adults alike, to the stars of Hollywood. Its totally aerodynamic shape almost hides its identity, except for the very Manx fender line. Its construction mimics the simple Meyers toad, but it's still not as simple. With aerodynamics, I hope it will set records. With only 1 gallon of gas, it might double the Volkswagen's 25 mile per gallon. 25 mile per gallon. With the largest, most powerful Ecotec or Subaru engines, it would definitely be the world's fastest gas-powered Meyers Manx dune buggy. Yet electrically powered, who knows? It remains to be seen. As my sweet mother saw me as a dreamer, the dreams never stopped, as I still do today. I have seen many of my dreams come true over my lifetime, and I am sure as ever that these dreams could still come to fruition with the right people at the right time, perhaps in a place like the Bonneville Salt Flats. The publicity that could be created could put Meyers Manx back on the map. The historic roots of off-road racing started in Baja, Mexico by a handful of Meyers Manx dune buggies. It's a little spooky that a guy named Pedro Meyer intuitively suggests that the Manx should once again be created in Mexico.
I can't hear you.
What a nice piece. That's a great line of thinking, I think.
I write pretty good.
You do.
I have a one woman that loves us who works with me almost daily on getting the book ready. The books have been written, but all the pictures have to be picked and all that stuff. So we're doing that right now.
So much work.
It is.
It is so much work.
There's so much what?
Work, yeah.
Oh, God.
Wilcox drove in and they all laughed.
Well, I think they drove
Ted.
in together. Ted,
Okay.
Don had a little race car that he crashed. What am I trying to say? Sunday. Everybody laughed at this funny looking car, and they stopped laughing after the end of the day because it beat everything there. And he never ever was beaten by anything.
Was this an autocross of some sort? Or what was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might have been, yeah.
Slalom.
Slalom, yeah. That's what I
And,
meant.
and they won slalom for 3 straight years of the West Coast, of top of the day. He was beaten once by a Cobra that barely got him. And they went to Pikes Peak and same thing. He did it all over again with everything. And his attempt to set that day's record at Pikes Peak, a wire fell off the electric fuel pump.
Oh,
That was from a guy that used to work for me. And but he was a nice guy. And the car stopped within sight of the finish line.
And it was ahead of everybody.
Oh yeah, he says, "You're not supposed to be here yet."
You're not supposed to be.
He walked up to the finish line and they said, "You're not supposed to be there." He says, "Well, the wire fell off the fuel pump or something." At any rate, he had beaten everything even at that point, except I think 2 or 3 championship open wheel cars by the family. What's the name?
Unser.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What about, was that about 1969? Somewhere in there?
It could have been because it was just after off-road racing had just started in 68, 67. Yeah, that's about the time. I don't remember. We have it. It's all written in the book, all by Don Wilcox. Wilcox was a lovely person.
I never knew him.
He was a band master in college.
Wow.
He ran the band, and it was all the football games with all the marching band, all that stuff. And then he went back east to Detroit, I think. And we've got the last of his writings. I knew him a little bit, not much as I did Ted, but they were lovely people. And they always set the house on fire for 3 years with that darn Meyers Manx with a Corvair that, well, Ted Trevor immediately took the car all apart. And Don Wilcox said, "Well, I'll see the car in a couple of weeks, all redone." No, he tripped over it the next morning. That's a Ted Trevor. Ted Trevor was so fast at creating,
Yeah.
and he'd run over to his machinery and recreate. He took all the spider gears out of the transmission, enlarged them or doubled them or some darn thing, and he lowered the car, and they got the stickiest tires in the world from somebody in San Francisco, and lightened the car, and he put an 80-pound bar across the front where the front bumper used to be, just to give it sticky in the front. And Don was a fabulous driver because he'd walk every circuit of every slalom race before he drove it, and he'd walk it and tell himself, well, he's going to shift gears here, going to use second gear here, and so forth, and be gone. And the thing, it would accelerate quicker than a Cobra, because of course you're only dealing with lightness. It's all about inertia. You have a car that weighs 1,500 pounds against 3,000 pound cars. That's twice they got twice the weight, and this little car had 300 and some horsepower with wonderful Corvair, and so it just had everything in the numbers over all the competition, and everybody stopped laughing. And then at the end of the day, they had fun runs, and that's so the other drivers could drive this thing. They let everybody drive it. And he said they always knocked down the inside corner cones because they expected some drifting.
Yeah.
It never drifted.
And it didn't.
It just would zip around the corner,
Yeah.
and knocking down the inside cones. Always a kind of a magical sense of the whole thing. They were so far ahead because of Ted Trevor's wonderful abilities, as well as Don's wonderful build behind the scene.
Did you ever go to Pikes Peak?
I never did during that. Oh, yes, I did once. I sat on the hillside.
You remember what the difficulty was?
I didn't know much about it.
Well, the road up Pikes Peak is a public road,
Yes.
and you're not allowed to go fast. It has like a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Okay.
So how does a potential racer get any idea of what the whole course is all about? So when you enter the race,
You mean you have to putt up the road at 20?
yeah,
And
then when practice and qualifying for the race is supposed to happen, do you know when they do it? Between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. in the morning.
oh, God.
And you remember that as you go up the mountain, it gets very cold, right?
Yes.
And you only get to practice the bottom half of the mountain one day and the top half of the mountain the next day.
Oh, God.
So when the race starts, you've actually never driven from the bottom all the way to the top. So the other problem, and this is where Ted really went wild, was that the bottom half of the mountain is paved. The top half is dirt. So no matter what you put on for tires, you were wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
And
However, now it's all paved.
and now it's all paved.
Yeah.
But in 1969, 70, 71, 72, 73, in that neighborhood, it was half and half. So it was guaranteed that you were wrong.
God. You know, we have a dear friend and his wife. She is the girls' champion Pikes Peak female driver.
She is?
Because
Nancy Chamberlain. Right.
because the road was paved just after she set her record.
Right.
Okay.
She was the fastest at that time.
At that time, right.
So that leaves her with the history of being the
Right.
fastest lady.
Perfect.
She's a nurse, retired.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that once worked for me 30-some years ago with my brother, my 99-year-old brother. They started a buggy, short chassis shortening business, building buggies, building Manxes. And they had a great big saw. They'd zip it right through the whole thing and twice take the piece out with all the little lines that came together. They slipped a piece of tubing
Over them. Great. Oh, that's good.
Well, he wrote his story, and so we put it in our book.
Yeah.
And it starts in 1966.
In 66, all right.
Yeah, it was just before the off-road racing thing got going, I guess, because that was 67. Okay, and number 6.
And 66
Manx.
Pikes Peak, too,
What are you looking at, Winnie?
the article. That chapter.
The Don wrote?
Well, the chapter starts with you, and then it goes into his story, yes.
Okay.
Well, when I was trying to be a race car driver, I went to Pikes Peak on Ted's suggestion.
Huh.
So he came from the West Coast, and I came from the East Coast.
Because you're both from Massachusetts?
Yeah, pretty much. Connecticut,
He's from
Massachusetts.
Connecticut. Yeah.
Connecticut or
It's all
something?
sort of New England,
Yeah,
you know?
he's from New Hampshire, right?
and we met at the race.
Huh.
And I had a Corvair in my buggy, and he had a Corvair in his too. But of course, he knew the mountain really well, and I was a complete beginner. And I remember a couple of things. One was, that's a long drive for a cup of coffee. and the second was how the tires didn't work.
Right.
Because
Because it was half.
No matter what you do, it's wrong.
which half was wrong, you know. But on the way up the mountain, the turbocharger on the Corvair let go, and it created a big fire
Oh, gee.
in my buggy, mostly out the tailpipe, because the oil was being pumped right into the hot exhaust, and it was burning out the tailpipe. So I was stuck on the side of Pikes Peak in the buggy with a huge fire coming out the back, and I didn't know what else to do. So I took my helmet off and I put it over the end of the exhaust pipe,
Snuff it.
Right.
which was not the smartest thing in the
No.
world. So it of course instantly melted,
Right.
because it's, that's only styrofoam.
You mean the helmet?
The helmet,
Yeah.
right? And but it did put the fire out.
Oh, good.
And Ted thought that was the funniest thing he had ever seen.
Yeah.
You know,
So-
speaking of funny things, the racing people said this thing isn't legal. It doesn't have a hood, an engine cover,
Mm.
and it should be metal. And the car's all fiberglass,
Mm.
of course, and it doesn't have a hood.
Mm.
So Ted went in the motorhome and took coat hangers and saran wrap and went out and made a wire thing with a bunch of coat hangers with a pair of pliers.
Yeah.
Covered it with some kind of tin foil.
Yeah.
And said, "There, I got a."
Engine
Okay, so
cover.
they allowed us how he had to start. Well, of course, it blew it off in the first turn.
Of course.
But he got started.
Perfect.
They're full of stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's
They
great.
were wonderful, creative guys. They were really having fun with the authority of the big racing people.
Yeah.
In Manhattan Beach.
In Manhattan Beach.
They were 3 cents. The Los Angeles Herald Express. They were 3 cents. I kept a penny. I saved $20 that way.
That's a big margin. It's a big margin.
At 33%.
Yeah. So you just naturally learned how to loft.
Well, I guess I did because I love the boats. And I messed around with lots of boats, wooden boats,
Yeah.
repairing and fixing. And then I worked for a boat building company that had wooden boats. And I got involved in all of that to the point. Lofting became something I knew a lot about by just being a wooden boat builder.
Yeah.
This is all before the dune buggy. And then I built my catamaran, 42-foot catamaran, 16 feet wide. I've been to Tahiti. The South Seas ruins a man, you know. It ruined all those mutineers.
That's right, it did.
They don't want to go back to
No,
old England.
not to civilization, thank you.
So having done that, I came home and I had a partner that had been to Tahiti. He hadn't been with me, but he had been there once. He was too screwed up too. I said, I got to build, we were into little catamarans. I was building little catamarans, 16, 18 footers. I had 2 or 3 of them. And my friends we had a little crowd of people that did that. We were called the Catamaniacs.
Catamaniacs.
So you see, I'm all strung out in the sea and all that stuff. The wood, the salt, and the ocean. It was my love affair.
And the girls.
They always did stick their nose in there, didn't they? And anyway, I went back to Tahiti. I was going to go back to Tahiti with my partner. He built I built and designed and built the boat, and he worked at Technicolor Studios. I had once worked there for 6 months or something, and so he says, I'll keep working, and I'll build the boat, and he'll keep working, supply the money to buy the lumber, and that's the way it was for 3 years. At the end of the 3 years, the boat's beautiful. I raced it once in the Ensenada to Newport to Ensenada race. It's the world's biggest entry-wise race. It's got 600 to 700 boats in it.
Good.
You ought to see them out there when they're getting ready to race, and all the spectators are out there with them. There's so much chop from being close to each other. Anyway, I sailed away and won my class, and that was the Hinano, named after the beer. And the beer was named after the flower. In Tahiti, the tallest mountain is 7,200 feet, and you can smell the Hinano flower before you see the island. As you do normally in the South Seas, you always get the smell of the island. It's very quaint. It's like a flower shop.
So what is the wood? Is it teak?
There's a lot of teak. There's 33 kinds of teak in the world, from all around the horse latitudes, next to the equator. Every country has a different kind of teak, slightly. Yeah, teak is a big deal. Anyway, I didn't use any. I used teak and trim, of course. When you trim your boat out with teak.
But what is what's the main framework? What are the ribs and the spars?
In a catamaran, it's all plywood.
It's all plywood,
Yeah.
okay.
I explain all that in my book.
Formed plywood?
Well,
Steam?
no. If you're making a plywood catamaran, you make bulkheads, and they have a shape.
Yeah.
And that came from a model that was about the size of that table.
Right.
Just one hull, not the whole thing. And then I very carefully set it up and bandsaw it at each station. And then then I draw a 3-inch squares, a checkerboard
Yeah.
on the model.
Right.
Now you can blow that up to full size
Mm-hmm.
and pick out the lines where the lines go.
Right.
Cutting them into stations tells you what the shape would be at that point.
At that point.
And you could copy that in full size.
Yeah.
So that's where you make your plywood bulkheads with big holes in them to walk through. And then there's stringers. Stringers are about 2x2s, and
2x2 for this
just
stringer.
the stringers. They're about every 6 inches. And then you cover that with plywood, again with screws,
Mm-hmm.
bronze screws, and a little fairing, much in Mondo.
But what is that, 1/8-inch plywood or
No, it's 3/8.
3/8?
Well, it's 42 feet long. You want some
Yeah, but
strength.
God, you can get it to bend?
Well, you only got 4 feet. You can bend it.
Okay.
It doesn't have a lot of bending because the catamaran's so long and skinny. It's only this wide at the midsection.
All right.
Longer than this room. So
Yeah.
a 4-foot piece can be screwed onto the stringers.
Got it.
You might dampen the outside to let it stretch.
You might.
It doesn't hurt. And you glue it all together as you put it down. All that stuff is what I did, and it took 3 years to build the boat. And he's got a girlfriend. Now I've married Shirley, and Shirley and I are ready to go to Tahiti together on the big catamaran. And Muzzy, my partner, Muslin, his name was Frank Muslin. Muzzy was his nickname. Muzzy had a girlfriend. He says, "Meyers, I can't go off into the ocean without marrying this girl. This would be not the right thing to do." I said, "Well, we'll get you married." All right. So we cut Limburger cheese and put in the air intake of his Volkswagen. Took off the hubcaps and filled them full of rocks and sent them off. And they went off for a week to Big Bear.
That was the
That was the beginning.
the
of
wedding
Yeah.
party, right?
He comes back a week later and he says, "Meyers, I've got responsibilities. I can't go off across the ocean with this woman. I'm not going with you." We spent 3 years together. I worked my ass off building this thing. Well, I'm not going. So we had to sell the boat. We sold the boat. We wanted 30 grand for it. We got 20. No, we didn't. We came down to 20. Somebody offered us 18. Muzzy wouldn't take less than 10, so I took the 8. That's what I got for 3 years of my work. But I've never made any money. Money has always been something else. And so the boat went away with these people that I knew. They bought the boat, and it sailed to Tahiti, and it was there 6 months, which is your maximum, and then you have to come home. And they were beating into the weather, on the wind, tacking, and overcast skies made not able to take any sun sights, so they were dead reckoning for about a week and a half, tacking. And they thought they were about 150 miles from Hawaii, where they were going, and a ship came over the horizon at dawn, and they shot their very pistol, and the ship answered them, and they came together, and they just wanted their position, and they found that they were right on. The boat hadn't made any leeway. Catamarans are very sharp in the water. They don't like to go sideways.
Yeah.
And so they were in good luck. And but while they were there, they drifted under the stern in the big seas. They knocked a spreader down.
Oops.
On the catamaran. And so the captain announces, "This is Admiralty law. You're in distress. You've got to come aboard us." And so the guy that owned the boat, Tim, he went up the ladder, and his buddy, but not my friend Eddie Lucas, who was a Tahitian who had helped me build the boat. And they tied him up and put him up on board the boat in tackle. And so the catamaran was last seen weather vaning to the weather.
Oh, they couldn't tow it?
It didn't have a jib up. It had a lowered main on a roll of reefing, and the wind filled the sail, and the tillers would slowly come about, and it sail off for a quarter of a mile, and then it would come about by itself and go over in this way. So it went taxing off, and that was the last they saw of the Hinana.
Oh, what a heartbreak.
Yeah. As I write in the book, I said something like, "And so where are you now, my child of mine? Only the fishes and the eyes of the birds know your demise." Something like that. Tearful stuff.
Tearful stuff. Tearful stuff.
So that was a real heartbreak for me. And that's where the Manx starts. That was probably near the end of the book called The Sea and Me. Where I'd spent 4 different ships at sea, in the Merchant Marine and the Navy. And you know about the Navy part. And that took up several years of my life. And a lot of fascinating experiences with people, girls.
Yeah. Did you make it back to...
Yeah, I'm here.
No, I make it back to there. Make it back to... where was the boat built again? Excuse me.
Oh, in Newport.
No, no, the South Pacific.
Oh, no, I never did. Money was never the driving force. I never cared about, I wanted the experience. I wanted to see a storm at sea, and I saw the biggest. I was in the North Atlantic, and a ship was capsized. I'm trying to remember the name. It's a very historic picture. And we went to that point. There was a tug that came out from Portsmouth in England. The name of the tug was the Turmoil. What a perfect name.
For a tug, yeah.
It was a seagoing tug, a big one.
A big one.
120 feet. And the Turmoil's out there trying to save the ship.
A sailing boat?
The ship's a great big, no.
Oh, no.
No big, these are big 10,000 ton liners.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, the ship had capsized from the seas. This story is all about heavy weather. My brother, unbelievably, he's never been to sea before. I came home from the Orient after 6 months, and I had a whole bunch of money in my pocket. And he says, "God, how'd you do that?" And I said, "Well, if you go to sea, it's pretty hard to spend it." and it all comes to you at the other end. He says, God, that sounds great. Can I go with you? I said, I don't think so, Dick, but we can go down to the Union Hall and find out. Well, here it is, Christmas time. Yeah, just after Christmas. And he said, and the Union Hall says, where do you want to go? I said, we want to go to Europe. Maybe I can get your brother to go on a waiver, because in crossing the Atlantic in Christmas, there's not a lot of sailors ready for
Nobody
that.
home, right? Yeah.
And so he got us a thing to pass and go get on a ship in the what am I trying to say? My mind goes blank. And we went to Newport News, Virginia, and took the ship and went across the Atlantic in the foulest of ever weather, huge seas. But my brother, who's never been to sea, now here's the captain down below the bridge. He's got a repeater compass. The guys on the bridge, there's the mate, always sitting on a stool with binoculars. There's a guy on the bow lookout, and there's the guy at the wheel. And the captain sees that the ship is being steered really well, because normally you're all over the place and being pushed around these huge seas, 100 feet. I mean, really big. And the ship is wallowing, and the stern goes underwater 20, 30 feet, and then suddenly it's out of the water. And the captain's watching this repeater compass, and he comes up to see who's steering, and there's my brother who's never been to sea before. He's just got a knack.
Nah. Great.
And so Dick and the captain became buddies. Oh, God. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that.
Well, you know, when you're in that big a sea, did you have any fear of the ship
Yeah, it crosses
failing?
your mind.
Yeah.
When the bow goes under, well, here's a boy that's first time at sea. He's in the, there are 3 departments on a ship. There's the black gang, the deck gang, and the people that take care of the beds and the cooking and the laundry. And there's a boy in that decision that he's getting seasick. Now, and every forecastle is a 2 foot, you put undo for, and there's a big porthole.
A bulkhead. Yeah.
He opens this big porthole, and the ship sticks its tail under the water 20 feet, and here's this solid shaft of green
Coming in.
closing through the door out into the hallway,
Oh my God.
and they're screaming, yelling at water,
Yeah.
and they finally stop it and all that. The boy is totally seasick and
Yeah.
screwed up. See, that's how heavy the weather was. My brother and I were playing gin rummy with our feet around a table, and we hear all the screaming and yelling. God, my memories are so full of strange things. All that stuff is my books, and it's well done.
But that was all leading up to
Oh, that's
the
going,
Manx.
that's going to Germany. Remember you said you lived in Germany 5 years?
Yeah.
Well, I was there for 5 or 6 days. Bremerhaven.
Bremerhaven. Wow.
There was a shipyard full of horses. There wasn't any locomotives, but there was a lot of railway cars, boxcars. And interestingly, the boxcars in Europe only have 4 wheels. They don't have a truck. The wheels apparently are pivotal, but to go around a curve. And the boxcars are smaller. They're only about the length of this room compared to ours.
Right.
And but they're all pushed around with horses, dray horses, beautiful dray horses. The horses have all these ribbons and bows on its tail and there's on its mane, and he's got a harness, and there's a handler that runs alongside of him and tells him what to do, stop and go and backwards and all. The horse lies down. The rails are here, and the railroad ties are sticking out. And the horse lies down with his chest on the ground. He's got a foot on each tie, and he starts and starts forward.
Really?
And he slowly comes up, and the rail car gets going.
I had
Beautiful.
no idea.
It's like going to the circus.
No idea.
And then start slowing down again. Depending on what the trainer has, the
Yeah.
handler taps him with a little cue.
How many horses to move a car?
One.
Oh, one.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Man.
I stood up and watched that stuff for 4 or 5 days. Unload the ship with all this horsepower. Anyway, that was the beautiful part. And I remember this bar I was in with my brother and others. Everybody's in overcoats and neckties. The bar has this sinking floor that goes down and then back up, and the circular rows and rows of tables. And you could look across to the other side, and every table has a phone number. And if there's 2 pretty ladies there, well, you pick up your phone and you dial, and then you see them pick it up and you chat. And pretty soon you walk over and you know.
And where is this?
That was in Bremerhaven.
In a beer garden kind of place?
It was just a bar on the street. I
Oh,
don't know.
bar. Okay. Got it.
You know, I thought, what a direct architectural achievement. Men and women meeting. And it's designed to meet each other.
Nice.
I've never seen that played out anywhere else
Really?
ever. And it ought to be, if that's what you're looking for. But I was a sailor. I was 22 or 3 or something.
Yeah,
I didn't have a lot of problems finding girls.
I'm sure.
It was kind of cute.
Yeah.
The names of the girls, oh my God. And Manila. They imitated all the movie stars. There was Greta. There was, like Greta Garbo. Hetty from Hetty Lamar.
Sure.
All the girls had these names. They were whores, but you went home with them, and in the morning they had to get to the clinic. And there's this great big long line of girls going up into this building. All the girls getting their shots. They're all clean.
That's great.
And, I was standing in line in a park, and to get Cokes, and these 2 little kids about 11 or 12 years old were serving the Cokes. And this guy from the army comes walking, hey, where's the whorehouse? And the little 12-year-old girl says, just around the corner, sir. It's wide open. And you go out, and there's around the corners, there's 100 girls in a line.
Yeah.
All going in to get their shots taken care of. See, it's totally open. Sex is just not a secret.
Not a secret, and it's a real lesson for us here in this country, isn't it?
You're so right.
The first evening, I'm gonna turn this
Preview.
off.
Well, this tube that comes up around the frame of the windshield, this piece will go here. But where this turns a corner, it doesn't go across. It goes in this direction to the 2 tubes that run up the center. And that presents a handle for climbing in and out. It also triangulates the framing,
Yep.
where these 2 little tubes are about 7 inches from each other. Go back to this frame, and then this frame here continues across. This one leans forward, but it also has, like the front, a tube that runs back and turns the corner, and I suppose it holds up the ducktail. The tail end of the roof has to have a quick relief. That's without any kind of vacuum. So it's all about aerodynamics.
Well, you'll be able to drop the groceries in right through the back.
And
right?
to get the groceries in and out, the roof has to fold open, and it has to fold open to get in. It's going to have an arm that does this, and you get in and you shut it. But when this went back, this one goes back too, and it raises the opening to climb in and out, to put the groceries in.
Yeah.
A car with 2 seats got to have some kind of a place to carry stuff. Whether it's camping gear
Or the dog.
and the dog.
The dog.
It'll also have a lid It comes up here, and that's where you put your whatever it is you carry. If you use the car to go off in the country, well, you go camping. If you just go to the store with it, well, that's where you carry the groceries. If it's an electric car, it's probably full of batteries. I've got all kinds of plans for the kinds of propulsion.
Yeah, you went over the 7 different power plants with me last time.
Well, that was starting with the Volkswagen, which is this. It has to be that because I have to get the car on the road and make it legal.
Yeah.
So because it's all laid out like a Volkswagen, it has the number of the Volkswagen in here, which is used to get a registration. That's the first thing. Just get it going with a Volkswagen engine. Volkswagen engine tranny. It's all Volkswagen axles. But you can replace any of that without any Volkswagen stuff. There's an axle that has air lifts, front and rear.
Mm-hmm.
That's from a little Ford truck, I think. There's the kinds of engines. There's, of course, the Volkswagen says immediately that you can use a Corvair or a Porsche.
Right.
Porsches are so expensive, I doubt you'll see many of them.
Or a Subaru.
And the Subaru too, but the Subaru at least has, well, you can buy a Subaru pretty cheap, a junker, and you can pull an engine and have something for $1,200–1,500.
The only trouble is you got to start adding all the water cooling stuff.
The whole thing is, the Subaru has swing axles like the Volkswagen. The transmission is almost the same size as a Volkswagen, so it fits within the yoke where the Volkswagen is mounted.
Yep.
So Subarus can be replaced in the Volkswagen layout quite easily. Beyond that, you go to the Ecotec. The Ecotec has a monster motor. It can be a little 130 horsepower, I think, up to 300 or 400 horsepower.
Yeah.
And they have little short axles because the transmission is lying athwartship. It's lying sideways. So your axles are very short, which means you don't want to go off-road racing with that because you don't have enough wheel travel.
Yeah.
But they have wonderful engines. Both the Subaru and the my brain went blank again. The Subaru and the Ecotec, being water cooled, says where you're going to put the wing. It'll be a wing. It can be, or it can be a different nose with a radiator in it. Or I doubt that these two intakes on the sides are only good for probably oil coolers.
Probably.
So that's your basic array. After that, you can talk about electronics. So a battery-powered Manx would be very simple because the whole tub, I'd have a different tub for that. The whole tub would be exactly the same, except the center-lined tunnel would be where you drop the batteries out the bottom for replacement. There's a kit made for Volkswagen battery-powered, and it's quite, the parts are so damn expensive. It's a good kit, but it's good for 100 or a little bit more miles. So it's not a very long-range affair, but it's good if you don't want to drive more than going to work and back. Of course, the other car is the one with the big batteries, is the one that'll get you 400 or 500 miles, and that's where the whole center line drops to the bottom, as well as some of it in the back in heavier batteries. We're not sure about some of that because I have to still find out what the answer is.
Yeah, understood.